On Wednesday, May 6, 2026, while Elon Musk was sitting in a federal courthouse in Oakland, California, testifying in his own lawsuit against Sam Altman, his other company, SpaceX, was finalizing a deal that would do more damage to OpenAI than the lawsuit ever could. SpaceX signed an agreement to lease the entire compute capacity of its Colossus One data center in Memphis, Tennessee, to Anthropic. All of it. More than 300 megawatts of power, over 220,000 NVIDIA GPUs. A supercomputer that 10 months ago was being built specifically to train Grok and compete with OpenAI is now going to be used by the company OpenAI fears most. And the man who, in February, publicly called Anthropic misanthropic and accused it of hating Western civilization, personally signed off on the deal. This is the story of how the AI industry rearranged itself in a single afternoon, and why the man most exposed by what just happened is the one nobody is talking about. If you want to follow how this restructuring of the AI industry actually plays out before the financial press catches up to it, subscribe and turn on notifications. The next moves are coming faster than the headlines. To understand why this deal lands the way it does, you have to understand what Anthropic was up against just 30 days ago. In April, the company publicly admitted what its users had been complaining about for weeks. Demand for Claude had created, in Anthropic's own words, inevitable strain on its infrastructure, and that strain was hitting the reliability and performance of the product, particularly during peak hours. Claude Code, the company's coding agent that has been quietly eating into developer workflows that used to belong to GitHub Copilot, was rate-limited to the point where paid subscribers were hitting walls inside their 5-hour usage windows. Enterprise customers were noticing. Investors who had just been told the company was raising at a $900 billion valuation were starting to ask uncomfortable questions about whether Anthropic could actually deliver on the demand it had created. The company needed compute, not in 12 months. Now, the traditional answer would have been Microsoft, the way OpenAI did it. But Anthropic could not go to Microsoft, because Microsoft is structurally entangled with OpenAI in a way that makes a Claude infrastructure deal politically impossible without renegotiating terms that Microsoft has spent 2 years protecting. Anthropic could not lean exclusively on Amazon because the existing 5-gigawatt agreement with AWS does not start materializing meaningful new capacity until late 2026. Google and Broadcom, the same 5-gigawatt scale, does not begin coming online until 2027. The company already had a $30 billion Azure capacity arrangement through its Microsoft and NVIDIA partnership, but again, capacity that lands on a multi-year timeline. None of these pipelines solved the problem of users hitting rate limits in May. So Anthropic did the one thing nobody in Silicon Valley considered possible. It went to Elon Musk. The negotiations, according to public statements from both sides, took place over the course of the previous week. Musk personally met with senior members of the Anthropic team. The man who, just 3 months earlier, had written on X that Anthropic was, quote, doomed to become the opposite of its name, sat across from those same executives and, in his own words afterward, found himself impressed. He wrote, "No one set off my evil detector. So long as they engage in critical self-examination, Claude will probably be good." This is not how Elon Musk talks about people he is currently suing, or people who are aligned with people he is currently suing. This is how Musk talks about a deal he intends to close. And the deal he closed is unusual, even by the standards of an industry that has spent 3 years writing checks bigger than the GDP of small nations. Anthropic gets the full Colossus One facility. The capacity comes online within the month. Anthropic immediately doubles Claude Code's 5-hour rate limits for every paid tier, removes the peak hour usage caps for Pro and Max subscribers, and significantly raises the API rate limits for Claude Opus. The user experience that was degrading 30 days ago becomes, in a matter of weeks, the most expanded compute envelope any frontier AI company has ever offered to its paying customers in a single move. What did SpaceX get out of it? On the surface, a marquee customer, exactly the kind of revenue anchor a company preparing for an IPO needs to show on its books. But the real prize is something else. Earlier this year, Musk merged xAI into SpaceX. The company that used to be his AI startup is now a division of his rocket company, and it is now called SpaceX AI. xAI as a separate corporate entity has been dissolved. The Colossus One data center, which was originally built in record time to power Grok, became surplus to requirements the moment SpaceX AI moved its training workloads to the larger Colossus 2 facility. Musk had a 220,000 GPU asset that was about to start depreciating without generating revenue. Anthropic had a runway problem. The deal essentially writes itself. Except it also does something Musk almost certainly understood from the first conversation. It puts the most credible direct competitor to OpenAI on infrastructure that the man currently suing OpenAI personally controls, while that lawsuit is still in active trial. Now consider what this looks like from inside OpenAI's offices in San Francisco. Sam Altman is currently spending his days managing two parallel crises. The first is the Stargate situation, a $500 billion data center project that has missed its flagship deployment targets, lost executives, walked away from international sites, and forced OpenAI to negotiate to rent back compute from Microsoft, the very company Stargate was supposed to free OpenAI from. The second is the Musk lawsuit, which is currently in its second week of jury testimony in Oakland. Musk is not just suing for damages. He is suing to invalidate the entire for-profit conversion that OpenAI completed earlier this year, the conversion that unlocked the SoftBank capital that OpenAI's runway depends on. If the jury finds for Musk, the financial architecture that keeps OpenAI operational starts coming apart in real time. And in the middle of all of that, Altman wakes up on a Wednesday morning to learn that the company that left OpenAI in 2021 to build a safer alternative just bought direct access to the largest AI supercomputer in the world from the man who is, at that exact moment, sitting in a courtroom trying to dismantle OpenAI's corporate structure. There is a moment in any industry restructuring where the smart money changes positions before the headlines explain why. This was that moment. The competitive picture for OpenAI, which already looked uncomfortable, just got significantly worse in three specific ways. First, Anthropic's compute constraint, which had been the single largest practical advantage OpenAI had in maintaining its enterprise market share through the first half of 2026, is gone. Anthropic can now serve the demand that was queuing up behind its rate limits. The customers who were tolerating Claude downtime because they liked the model better than ChatGPT are about to stop tolerating anything because the downtime is about to stop. Second, the Pentagon, which blacklisted Anthropic in March, has been quietly embracing Grok and other models for military applications. With xAI now folded into SpaceX, and SpaceX leasing its compute infrastructure to Anthropic, the Pentagon is now doing business with the corporate parent of the company it just declared a supply chain risk. The Pentagon's position has just been made structurally inconsistent, and the litigation Anthropic filed against the Trump administration over that blacklisting suddenly looks a lot less like an underdog fight. Third, the orbital piece. Anthropic has expressed interest in partnering with SpaceX to develop multiple gigawatts of compute capacity in space, the kind of long-horizon infrastructure bet that, if it materializes at all, lands on Anthropic's side of the ledger and on nobody else's. OpenAI has access to none of that. The thing about Sam Altman is that he is a very good poker player, and he has been in worse spots before. He will spend the next 10 days minimizing the deal in public statements, framing it as just another compute arrangement in a sector full of compute arrangements, comparing the size of OpenAI's total commitments to the 300 megawatts in question. He will probably point out, accurately, that OpenAI's disclosed compute commitments now exceed $1.4 trillion across multiple partners, which is true. He will not address the part where one of those partners is the same Microsoft that just spent the last 6 months quietly building exit ramps out of its OpenAI exposure. He will not address the part where a year ago Anthropic was a footnote in the financial press and is now negotiating a $900 billion valuation. He will not address the part where the man suing him is now the man who controls the infrastructure that competes with him. But the people whose job it is to look at this are looking at it. The investment bank notes will be out within the week. The Bloomberg analysts will start asking, in print, whether Anthropic has just become the structural winner of the AI market consolidation. Wells Fargo, according to TipRank's reporting on the day of the announcement, has already flagged the deal as potentially the catalyst that turns Anthropic's compute crunch into sustained revenue growth. That language gets repeated in dozens of LP letters over the next 2 weeks. The narrative repositioning starts immediately, and Sam Altman cannot stop it because the deal is signed, the compute is coming online within the month, and the person who would have to be persuaded to undo it is currently in court trying to undo Altman's company entirely. 3 IPOs are coming. Anthropic, SpaceX, and OpenAI itself are all reportedly planning public listings later this year. The deal that was announced on Wednesday changes the order in which those 3 companies present themselves to public market investors. Anthropic now walks in with a story about resolved compute constraints and a marquee infrastructure deal with the most aerospace-capable company on Earth. SpaceX walks in with Anthropic as a flagship customer, which is exactly the kind of validation private space companies pay millions to manufacture. OpenAI walks in carrying a $500 billion Stargate project with disclosure problems, an active jury trial that could invalidate its corporate structure, and a competitor whose runway just got extended by 6 to 12 months. The question that is now sitting on the desks of every fund manager who is going to participate in those IPOs is whether OpenAI's disclosed valuation is still defensible after Wednesday afternoon, or whether the implicit pricing premium that OpenAI commanded over Anthropic was a function of Anthropic's compute limitations rather than OpenAI's product superiority. If it was the latter, the gap between those 2 valuations is going to compress, and it is going to compress publicly, with names attached, in a way that makes the Stargate disclosures look like a side issue. Sam Altman did not panic on Wednesday in any visible sense. He is too disciplined for that. But he has spent his career building a company on the assumption that compute scale was the moat, that infrastructure access was something only OpenAI and Microsoft could secure at frontier scale, and that the rest of the industry would always be one capital round behind. Wednesday took a hammer to all 3 assumptions in a single press release, and the press release was not even from OpenAI's biggest competitor. It was from a company that does not currently launch its rockets in the same hemisphere as Silicon Valley. So here is what is actually worth watching. The next OpenAI earnings disclosure or investor letter, whichever lands first, will have to contain language about competitive positioning that did not need to exist last month. The next time Microsoft is asked on an earnings call about its OpenAI exposure, the answer is going to be more carefully worded than the last time. And somewhere in the next 40 days, Anthropic will hold a developer event or a product announcement where the new compute capacity gets translated into a feature that ChatGPT cannot match, and the headlines will write themselves. What do you think this deal means for OpenAI's position 1 year from now? Will Sam Altman find a way to recover the narrative, or did Wednesday afternoon mark the actual high-water mark of OpenAI's industry dominance? Leave your answer in the comments. I read them all. If you want to keep watching this restructuring as it accelerates, because it is going to accelerate from here, subscribe and turn on notifications. The Musk lawsuit verdict is coming. The OpenAI IPO documentation is coming. The Anthropic developer announcements are coming. None of them are going to be quiet. Some moments in technology history get marked by a product launch. Others get marked by a single signature on a leasing agreement that nobody in the room realized would matter as much as it did. May 6, 2026 was the second kind of moment. The story everyone was watching was Musk in a courtroom. The story that actually happened was 400 miles away in a data center in Memphis, where a deal got signed that quietly redrew the map.